Well, last week we launched a series called Left to Our Own Devices, and we discovered together how our screens are making us more distracted, how we're shallowly scrolling but not deeply reflecting. Our hope and prayer is that we would ask this question: are you using your smartphone, or is your smartphone using you? I mean, think about it. What are our screens doing to us? And we want to help get your life back. So the research is out. Our phones have promised connection, yet we're more disconnected than ever before and less engaged with real life people than ever before. And this is affecting our children and teenagers at an alarming rate. Last year, the book The Anxious Generation hit bookstores by storm. And in this book, social psychologist Jonathan Haidt lays out the facts about the epidemic of teen mental illness that hit many countries all at the same time. He showed how play-based childhood began to decline in the 1980s and was finally wiped out by the arrival of the phone-based childhood in the early 2010s. He actually names it. He calls it the Great Rewiring of Childhood. And he unpacks how it's interfered with children's social and even neurological development, including sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, addiction, loneliness, and of course, social comparison. In another resource, the director of outpatient services at the Newport Institute states, when you are mindlessly scrolling, you're an absent presence. That is, they called it the zombie state. You're missing opportunities for connection, experiences, and real life engagement. Guys, our screens are leaving us sedated and numb, exhausted and lonely, not really fully awake to life. And we are in the worst mental health crisis in decades. And one alarming fact that we've recently learned is that the more time you spend on a screen, the more likely you are to report that you are unhappy. And there are no exceptions to this. Tech leaders know this themselves. They famously do not allow their children on tech. And for many of us, this image here is an all too common experience with our family or hanging out with our friends. Guys, our phones are costing us our time and our attention, but more importantly, they're also costing us our relationships with our family, our friends, and our community. And instead of feeling fully alive, we're barely awake to life. And instead of being energized and captivated by the adventure of life, we feel exhausted and even numbed by it. My greatest memories and experiences that I have nothing to do with what I've seen on a screen. And the same is probably true for you as well. So instead of feeling life-giving connections with others, what's happening is that we're lonelier than ever. And what we need today is not so much more information, we need some wisdom, particularly the wisdom of Jesus, and to apply this wisdom to our lives. Now, Jesus said in his famous Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 6:22 and 23, your eye is like a lamp that provides light for your body. And when your eye is healthy, your whole body is filled with light. But when your eye is unhealthy, your whole body is filled with darkness. And then he said something really difficult. And if the light that you think you have is actually darkness, how deep that darkness is. You know, Jesus states that he's the light of the world and that we're to be the light to others. But all too often, it's the light of our phones, right, that are guiding us through life. And it's a poor exchange. So we need to ask wiser questions like, what matters most to you? You know, I had this question posed to me at the Life Purpose Lab that we hosted here at our church a few weeks ago. And upon reflection, my mind and heart went directly to my family. I began to think, I want to be, what's most important to me is I want to be a good husband, a good father and grandfather. And how can I do this? I began to write by creating strategic time and experiences together. I wanted to pass wisdom and life skills on to those I love, to live a life of wisdom and gratitude and resilience for them to follow, and to follow Jesus well, so that when I walked into a room, there would be an air of lightness rather than heaviness or darkness. And that by living a life of character, faith, hope, and love, that I might be able to be an influence for good in my family's life. And all of this takes living with purpose, on purpose, and certainly not perfection, but it's each and every day. So, how can we darken this light here a little bit and bring light and life to the people that we love the most? Well, the next steps come from a wonderful book I'd recommend to all parents and maybe even all of us as humans, no matter what our stage of life is. And it's called The Tech Wise Family by Andy Crouch. And one of the things that we can do is to choose character over convenience. You know, technology has no doubt made life easier for us, but it hasn't necessarily made it more joyful. Joyful living comes from recognizing the presence of God in our lives every day and living with rooted character, deeper connections, and a contributing life to the lives of others around you. You know, a question was posed to teenagers aged 13 to even up to 21. And they asked the question, if you could change one thing about your parents, what would you change? I mean, could you imagine the answers? That's a scary question to ask. Yet it didn't center on what the parents, were wearing or the variety of the ways that their parents embarrassed them. The answer was this: I would like to change the fact that I would like to see them have less time on their phones and more time talking to me. Guys, it's not just a kid issue. This is a human issue. We were made for deep connection. It reminds me of what John wrote to the church in 2 John 1:12. He says, I have much more to say to you, but I don't want to do it with paper and ink. Back in that day, paper and ink was the newest technology. But he said this, for I hope to visit you soon and to talk with you face to face. Guys, he finishes by saying, then our joy will be complete. Guys, nothing beats face to face. Matter of fact, 94% of all communication is really nonverbal. And so phones and texts and emails, yeah, they're convenient, but they can never replace real life interaction and presence. Look, we all want our kids to grow up and live life well. We want them to have the soft skills to get along with other people, to practice empathy as they live out the golden rule. And this comes from modeling the way as parents by spending meaningful time with each other and as a family. So one way to do this is to talk with your kids about tech. You know, just like we had to back in the days talk to our kids about sex and drugs, and you still need to do today, we need to now talk to them about tech. And begin with the why. You know, attack the issue, not the person, and explain to them what you heard earlier, you know, this research that we talked about, and do your own research on the topic. And tell them it's not that you don't trust them, you just don't trust the ones who are trying to make a buck off of them. And be honest and be real and admit your own mistakes when it comes to the screens and move forward together. Also, I'd encourage you to even leverage technology to limit technology. You know, play the game, spot the lie maybe when you're watching TV together. Encourage your kids to uncover bad or broken behavior. Or commercials are great with this. You know, commercials lie to us all the time. You know, let them see how the world works and how they're trying to be sold to. And talk about it. And talk about how it's important for us to treat and love people well. Here's the thing, guys. Formation is going to happen. You'll either conform to this world or you're going to be transformed by God's work in your life. And here's the news. You get to choose. You can teach your kids about right or wrong, or the world's going to do it through the screens. You can teach them about financial principles, or the world is going to model the way to them and they're going to end up living their lives in suffocating debt. The role you have as a parent is to instruct your kids how to navigate the ways of this world. So live with character and integrity, even if it's difficult. You want to teach them this. Come back from failure into how to live joyfully, even if circumstances are difficult. Guys, don't just monitor screen time, monitor their hearts. Proverbs 4:23 says, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. There's nothing more important that you can do. And there are so many things, again, that are at our fingertips, even good things. But the character of temperance and self-control matter to a well-lived life. I'm reminded of what Paul writes to the church in 1 Corinthians. He says, you say, I'm allowed to do anything, but not everything is good for you. And even though I am allowed to do anything, Paul writes, I must not become a slave to anything. Guys, build their character along with their competencies, because their competency will only take them as far as their character allows. So help build their character. And part of that is making wise decisions with technology. Now, secondly, is choose to create rather than just consume. God didn't create us to be held hostage by a screen and simply consuming entertainment day in and day out. He's a creative God, and we are made in his image. We are creative beings. And sometimes the greatest thing all of us can do is simply just unplug for a little bit. And we can create together. Maybe prepare meals together, draw and dream and laugh together. Sometimes moments are just meant to be enjoyed and not shared with anyone, right? You enjoy the break more away, with your kids and with your family if you don't feel the need to compulsively share it all the time and see how many other people are going to like what you're doing, right? Just separate yourself from that. Another thing you can do is to leverage tech to limit tech again. I know somebody who uses a device called the Brick. And when they tap this device with their phone, it deadens certain apps before they walk in through the door at the end of a long day at work. And it allows you to be more present. It allows you to be more playful and to create memories and moments together. So don't miss out on your life to live because you're watching somebody else's life lived out online. Keep devices also in a place that's kind of central to the house, in a public place of your house. The average child is exposed to pornography at the age of 8 these days. 8. So limit exposure, employ loving accountability. And one game changer is to not go to bed with your phone. And I know when I say that, a lot of us just kind of, the flags go up, the radar goes up. But for many of us, the best way for us to get our life back is to buy an alarm clock. We don't need to use our phones for that. We were created for limits. And our task, and God, our battle with God is always going to try to be like him, to try to take on more like he is. Yet we were created for limits. We were created to sleep well. We were created for temperance and things in moderation. This reminds me of my granddaughter, Nolly, who we love so much. And sometimes we'll go down and we'll visit her and her family. And my son and his wife will say, she can watch a little bit of TV. She loves Bluey right now, but she can't watch a lot of it. You can give her a little bit, but not a lot, because they said, and here's what they said, if she watches too much, she just gets grumpy. It actually does something to her. A little bit's fine, a lot's too much. And so Laura does this so well. When we visit, she cooks and prepares meals with her. She plays outside, reads books with her. And when we visit, it's a time of connection. It's a time of real life, face to face. Guys, deep spiritual longings, which ought to be lovingly tended and skillfully cultivated, can be choked to death by binge watching and immersive gaming and social media. And if I could just call a timeout and just a word to students who might be watching this. I want to encourage you to do this for yourself, for your own well being and for your own development and growth. Don't make your parents out to be the bad guy in this. One of the greatest ways of showing independence is by exercising wisdom through temperance and self-control. And guys, temperance is our virtue of the month. And go to our website and work through some of those resources. Get educated on this and learn and develop and grow in these character traits. Here's the thing. God created everyone uniquely and wonderfully. So live your life to its greatest divine potential. And one of the best things all of us could do this week is to commit to eating dinner together. Maybe let's make a commitment. I'll just throw it out. 2 meals together as a family around the table. Now, some of you may be able to do much more than this, but others of you, the 2 meals, that's quite a challenge. But I want to encourage you to try. Take back your life and family. And here's the deal. No phones allowed at the table. Maybe even help each other prepare the meal, or at least clean up afterwards. Spend this time together. No distractions, just being with each other. And then finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't say one of the greatest things that you can do is experience Jesus together. Experiencing Jesus is found along a relational pathway with families, friends, and other people who love and experience Jesus themselves. Matter of fact, we are loved into loving Jesus. That's how it works. And when you're doom scrolling, the opposite is happening. Your mind is looking for the negative to seek out perceived danger. It's just kind of how we're wired as nations. It's that whole, as humans, I should say, it's that whole fight or flight mentality that we have here to keep us alive. But it also keeps our stress levels high. So John writes to the church in 1 John 4:18, and he says this: perfect love expels all fear. Guys, we could use that. We could use some fear expelled from our lives. He goes on to write to his protege Timothy, for God has not given us the spirit of fear and timidity, but of power and of love and of self-discipline or temperance. No wonder Jesus' greatest command was to love. So families help their individual members discover and maintain their resilient identity in Jesus. That's the win. And 95% of people who say yes to Jesus do so before the age of 18 because family matters, relationships matter, modeling the way matters. So share dinner together, play and laugh together, solve some problems together, listen to each other, listen to each other's faith stories, listen to each other's struggles and even doubts. And boy, next level stuff, pray for each other. This all reminds me of what Jesus said when he was asked a really great question. Somebody asked him, Jesus, there's like 600 laws we're supposed to follow. This was at that time of that culture. Can you simplify this at all for us? Or could you tell us what the most important ones are? And Jesus answered and he said, yeah, I can. Matter of fact, I can summarize all of those laws into 2 simple ones that will guide your life. And here's what he said. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. But a second one is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. And love your family as yourself. We were made for relationship. Relationship with God and relationship with each other. And it's real life relationship. So, put down your phone and take back your life.